A battle is brewing in front of the Supreme Court, and it's long overdue. The question at hand should be a rhetorical one. Should parents have a say in what their children are taught and exposed to at school? Specifically, should teachers, administrators, and district overlords be able to force feed the LGBTQ agenda to your kids without your permission or recourse to opt out? Well, that's the argument being heard before the Supreme Court this week. The case is Mahmoud v. Taylor, and it centers around whether or not Montgomery County Public Schools violated the First Amendment by denying opt-out requests for books that contradict their religious beliefs, even while allowing exemptions for other religious objections, such as books depicting the Muslim prophet Muhammad. The books here in question are, you guessed it, books that push the gay agenda on students as young as kindergarten. The issue, in my eyes, is actually less about religious beliefs or objections and more about why the hell are gay-themed books being pushed on children? And the argument made by these activists on the other side just reinforces my point.
We know that a number of our kids are LGBTQ+. And the reality that we're talking about today is people want to erase us from books. They want to erase us from existing. And are we going to let them erase us? No, we are not. Because we celebrate our diversity. We recognize that we all can coexist, but we have to learn about the world.
We don't need to learn about your gay sex. Why are these indulgent and self-centered adults so fixated on children and students acknowledging or validating their sexual preference? It's sick. The left wants men in women's sports and locker rooms, gay books in your classrooms, and activists educating the next generation, and that's just icky. Save that stuff for RuPaul's Drag Race. I can't even say it, it's so ridiculous. RuPaul's Drag Race, and keep education about reading and math, please, for the love of God. Joining me now with her take on that and so much more going on with the trans agenda this week, Michele Tafoya, the Michele Tafoya Podcast host. All right, Michele. A lot going on. Let's start with the Supreme Court. Now, every legal expert I've listened to across Fox News has said this is probably an easy victory for the parents. Even some of the liberal justices are like, yeah, these books make me feel uncomfy, and for good reason. But what I don't understand, and we may never know, why are there activists and progressives and leftists out there that are going so far to trans or to indoctrinate school children? Like, what is in it for them?
I think there's a part of this that is money. I've spoken to a guy who was a civil rights attorney for the gay community back in the day. And his assessment is ever since the T was added, and the T was added purposefully because gays got a lot of the rights that they wanted. They're free to marry, they're free to adopt children, et cetera, et cetera. And so once all those rights were secured, oh gosh, where's the fundraising going to go now? We don't have any funds coming in. So we got to pick another oppressed class. And so this is the class that they've chosen. Now, this is not to deny that there are trans people in the world and that they face certain hurdles, but to give them sort of this elevated status where they can step into a sport and infringe upon the rights of girls is absurd. And to push this stuff on kindergarten, any elementary level school is ridiculous. You played that soundbite, Tommy, and I thought it was really revealing. He said they want to erase us from books. No one's asking anyone to erase you from books or even to remove the books from the classroom. This lawsuit is about parents being able to say, I don't want my kid in the class if you're going to read these books aloud. I don't want my kid forced to read these books for any kind of school assignment. This is just what I don't want for my kids. And parents should have that right, whether it's a religious issue or just a moral issue. Parents should have that right. And I think this is kind of the issue of the day in all of this cultural stuff is, trying to come between parents and their children. And I'll tell you, as a mother of two, I will not have it.
I also don't understand why these books are being read to children to begin with. Why does, to me, all the way through your senior year of high school, I'm not really sure why you need to get a gay education. I'm not really sure why teachers feel the need to educate people on same-sex relationships and trans. I don't understand why that's a part of the curriculum. I'm not that old. I'm a millennial, right? When I went to school, I never remember or recall being taught about gay relationships or, transing or, my uncle married his, his friend. I never learned that stuff because it wasn't pertinent to education in general. But that seems to be a big part of it now, is that some folks think that kind of education is what kids really need right now as they're looking for jobs and, they're looking to elevate themselves through the corporate ladder, is they really need to have expertise in gay. And I'm not sure where that became so, commonplace and the new normal, as they say. I don't know. I can't pinpoint the exact year, but I'm wondering, with these Supreme Court cases, do we have a chance to just eliminate this stuff from curriculum and leave that to the parents?
Well, look, in Maryland, as I understand it, I listened to a good bit of the Supreme Court hearing. You can opt your kid out of I think it's called Family Health and Sexuality class. You can opt your kid out of that with no problem. But if your third grade teacher decides to read Pride Puppy or any other number of books, you're not allowed to opt out. So why? See, in the one class, it's a very specific class devoted to sexuality and gender and all that kind of stuff. The other one is just, let's read these books to young kids. And as you said, normalize it. I don't remember any of this either. And listen, I think if you listen to Randy Weingarten, the president, which I know that's tough, the president of the American Federation of Teachers, she says we need to teach the whole kid, not just reading and math. We need to teach the full child. And it's sort of like, why would I want to give that responsibility to you or any other teacher? I carried this kid for 9 months. I birthed this child. No one cares more about this child than I do. I will teach them, the stuff that I want at home. You please prepare my kid with financial literacy, math, reading and writing. Is that so tough? We've seen numbers plummet here in Minnesota. They've plummeted in Maryland on these scores. They can blame anything else. They want to say, well, fully fund us and we'll be able to teach better. Now, I don't think that's the real deal. I think we've gone from critical race theory, where we're trying to now divide kids by race. Now we've got the gender theory, where we're trying to divide kids up and teach the full person. The full person becomes full when they're in college or late in high school, when their brain is actually fully developed. This is absurd. We all know it. People just need to stand up.
Yeah. I mean, I remember like 4th and 5th grade when we were taught the whole child or whatever that is. And it was like, basically, y'all need to start using deodorant because you stink. And that's as far as it went, and then there was obviously the girls were separated and we learned some stuff, and the guys were separated and they learned some stuff. And it was just stuff that they needed to know about the way their bodies were changing. But it wasn't like, hey, here's how you have a gay relationship. It just... I don't understand. Maybe that's why I only have dogs as children, because the thought of sending a human child in to learn this stuff is horrifying to me. But that's not the end of the conversation either. So Outkick has been reporting on this pretty extensively. I believe, one of the only outlets that really is hammering this home. But there is evidence to suggest that Nike maybe, allegedly, funding some kind of gender affirming care puberty blocker study where, and again, this is sticky, it's kind of hard to really understand, but Nike could potentially be funding research about if you give puberty blockers to boys at a certain age, maybe they won't have a biological advantage. And basically what it is Nike could potentially be funding social experimentation on children and the trensing of children and what impacts it has. Now, if so, this is, I think, a pretty big deal. Michele, what do you think? You've been in sports your whole life. Yeah,
I think this is a big, big deal because, like you, the only reason I can think that Nike would be involved in this is to, because they consider themselves, and they've got a whole page of their website devoted to this. They are allies of the LGBTQIA community. They've added, a number of letters, and that the only way to be an ally is to support all of these efforts. And one of these quote unquote efforts is to be inclusive and include trans girls, again, folks, biological boys, biological males, in girls' sports so that they're not excluded. But by doing that, you are excluding girls. because these boys are taking spots on rosters. We've been through it, Tommy. We all know what the ramifications are. So what this study is supposed to do, and by the way, the study is being led by a trans woman, so a biological male now identifying as female, and it measures 10 fitness steps, 10 fitness levels before you start your puberty blockers, and then after, and every 6 months, to see how your strength is affected by these things. The only ostensible reason I could think that Nike is doing this is exactly what you said, to show that men, biological boys, that their strength, their power, their vertical jump, whatever it is, decreases after they take these blockers, and therefore they should be allowed in women's sports. Why in the hell do we have divisions to begin with if we're not going to honor them? And I'm sorry, telling someone to take puberty blockers, that somehow makes them female is absolutely, it's false. It's false.
It's not
and
just
you know
false,
how we know?
Michele.
The UK Supreme Court just told us it's false, but go ahead.
Yeah. It's not just false. It's abusive.
Yes.
It's abusive to give children puberty blockers. Why that even ever became a thing to me is so disgusting and reprehensible. So essentially what you're saying here is you're a boy, you think you're a girl. I don't believe there's any child that was born in the wrong body, first of all.
I agree.
You know, if you want to be trans later in life, have at it. But I don't think there's any child that can understand the ramifications of changing their gender, let alone taking puberty blockers and other things. And when you take these puberty blockers and all these things, first of all, you're a pharmaceutical patient for life. You're taking puberty blockers to stop the natural processes in your own body. That's abusive. It's abusive. And what you're doing to these little boys is you're essentially saying, we're going to debilitate you so that we can claim that you don't have an advantage when you go and compete against girls. That is a sick, twisted, disgusting notion. And I've never been a fan of Nike. Their whole thing about, you know, the Chinese labor, and then you've got the Kaepernick era with, you know, he sacrificed so much. This, though, this is by far the most egregious thing. And, you know, if Bud Light tanked because of the Dylan Mulvaney can, if Nike is indeed funding something like this, I don't know how people can look away.
I don't either. And I've seen a lot of posting about it on X, and I posted about it on X, and a lot of us have, because you're right. This is when you're talking about young people, you're talking about people, again, whose brains are not developed enough to understand all of what's coming next and what these drugs might do to them. So we could go the other direction too. Young women, biological females who feel like I should be a guy, I should be a man. I don't want to have a period. I don't want to get boobs. Oh, okay, honey, because I love you so much, I'm going to allow you to take puberty blockers so you don't have to go through this uncomfortable part of life. I know it's tough. That's just so short-sighted. And you could go as far as you want to say evil, disgusting. I saw Dr. Phil interview a woman who said she felt guilty about having good eyes, healthy sight. Yeah. And so she threw bleach in her eyes, and now she feels okay that she's now blinded because she never felt like she really deserved eyesight. Does that sound like a healthy, mentally healthy human being? So this is kind of the same idea. You're telling kids that they're born in the wrong body. And that's just a terrible message to relate to someone who's, as you said, not an adult.
It's just gross. It bothers me. I think the Trump administration has been doing everything that it can to stop some of this and to protect children. But we know, as soon as a Democrat gets back in that White House, they're going to do a number of things. But the transing of children will be high up on that list. It's disgusting. Speaking of that, Minnesota is a trans sanctuary state, I believe. So that's great. Other things going on in Minnesota. God help y'all. Not only do you still have to deal with Tim Walz, but now I want to go to this because this, I guess, impacts you directly if you're a Minnesotan. We got the Tesla terrorist, all right? We got the video of this guy going and keying Teslas. And it's pretty obvious that it's him, and it's pretty obvious he's keying Teslas. But they decided that they're going to seek diversion instead. So no charges. Minneapolis learned nothing from the mostly peaceful George Floyd riots, I suppose. And I guess what this guy doing right here, I guess he's just doing some artwork.
That's what it is. It's creativity, right? So Mary Moriarty is the district attorney who said, we're going to choose diversion for you instead. Let me tell you what the Minneapolis diversion program does. They want you to have like this second chance. It's supposed to be for people who have traffic moving violations, driving without a valid license, shoplifting, dining and dashing, failure to pay cab fare, livability or nuisance offenses, or obstructing a police officer without use of force. It's supposed to be for people who commit less than $5,000 worth of damage. This is $21,000. And the chief of police in Minneapolis is thoroughly irate over this, as should all of Minnesota be. This is only in Hennepin County, but that includes Minneapolis and St. Paul. I don't know if it includes St. Paul. I'd have to double check on that. I'm not a native Minnesotan. I've only lived here 30 years. I should know. But the point being that this is a massive portion of the state where a lot of the crime is committed. This activist, Mary Moriarty, this district attorney, George Soros funded, is deciding that this guy, gosh darn it, he should have a second chance. Well, I guarantee you, if he was keying cars that said BLM on them, or if he was outside of an abortion clinic keying cars, he'd be in jail right now. This is cherry picking who gets this diversion program, and this is the direction that Minnesota writ large is going.
Yeah, and it's not like it was one vehicle either.
No.
I mean, this is not, oh, I had a fit of rage, and I keyed a vehicle because I took my parking spot. Like, this is, I'm going to go key Teslas. And the message it sends is that you too can go key a Tesla or do whatever you want, bring your poor dog along for the ride. And, not much will happen to you. So Minneapolis, best of luck to you all there.
Oh, we need it.
Another thing that liberals are crying about, I'm sure many in Minneapolis crying the same cry, Mahmoud Khalil, we're supposed to feel really sad that he had a child and he wasn't allowed to be at the child's birth. There's a lot of outcry about this. I slept fine last night, but I'm wondering what your take is on this. If they're not talking about Kilmar, Abrego, Garcia, they're talking about Mahmoud Khalil. They're very upset that these people are being infringed upon. What's your take?
Well, they're upset because it affects their agenda of bringing in all kinds of people who hate America, quite frankly, and letting them thrive here in the America they want to destroy. Don't be fooled. Just because this group is maybe small right now of people who genuinely hate this country, hate Israel, hate the West, these are people that are looking to disrupt and destroy. And this guy did that on the campus of Columbia. We all know that. This is not a free speech issue. This is a guy who, whatever, conveniently or whatever, got married, hoped that would help keep his feet on the ground here in America. Now he can't be at the birth of his child. You know how many people can't be at the birth of their own child for a variety of reasons? So no, I'm not crying over this either. When you come here to study in our prestigious universities, but your real mission is to disrupt and destroy and vandalize and chant and hate us, and you're here on a student visa, you know what? That visa can get canceled. And sorry, you should have thought of all the other things in your life that this might affect before you went forward and, busted into Hamilton Hall on Columbia University.
And the wife can leave too. I mean,
sure she can.
Listen, you're also free to go. So that's another route. Apparently, that's not the route they want to take, but it's going to be probably the route they're going to have to. I don't think this cat's getting back he's being held currently, but I don't think he's ever going to just be allowed to roam freely, at least not with this president in office. But I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one. Oh, it's so stupid. I do want to touch a little bit on the Kilmar, Abrego, Garcia stuff. I mean, there's only so much we can say about how stupid this is. It's pretty freaking stupid. But Michele, they've changed it now from Maryland man to due process. Now they've changed it. We're getting more information that this guy's, not Mother Teresa. So now it's like, but it doesn't matter. Due process. And that's the cry now. And I don't know how well it's connecting with people where you are, but I don't think that many people in Nashville, Tennessee, in the South, in conservative states, working class people, I don't know if they give a hooty hoot about due process for illegal aliens, but maybe it's different in Minnesota.
Well, I'm not super in touch with the population here as a whole and what their reaction. I talk to people here and there. But anyone I talk to understands that this is an illegal criminal migrant, that the left and a very small group on the left is traveling to El Salvador to rally on this guy's behalf. It looks like totally, just political photo op, which is what it is. But I can tell you that we have one senator, Tina Smith, who isn't running again in 26. She's a senator from Minnesota, along with Amy Klobuchar. Tina Smith cares more about her asylum seekers than she does about other Minnesotans. She's made that clear at many of a hearing. So this is something that, again, certain parts of the left it's the hill they're going to choose to die on. But I don't think most of America wants to go along with this. To suggest that they've disappeared him and that it could happen to you too. Not if you're an American citizen, it can't. And they're willing to overlook all the crime that has been brought to this country by these illegal gang members, MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. They're willing to overlook all of that and forget about the due process for people who have died at their hands and say, this guy, he represents due process. This is not the guy you want representing due process.
Here's what else I think is so stupid about these people. I mean, this is, of all the things, I mean, the men and women's sports and the two dumbest I can think of. But what's wild to me is that they are trying to use that, like, it could happen to you too.
Right.
But then even as they say that, do they not hear themselves? Like, what could actually happen to you is you could be murdered by an illegal alien. Like, that's going to happen way sooner than you being sent to El Salvador if you were an American citizen and all of a sudden you just get caught up and sent to El Salvador. Like, that's not going to happen to you in this universe. But there's a pretty real possibility that you could be murdered or raped by an illegal alien or mugged by an illegal alien or hit by a drunk driving illegal alien. I mean, the stories are piling up on this.
Yeah.
So that's
really
actually
are.
the whole it could happen to you thing.
Yeah.
Do they even realize how dumb they sound when it's like,
It's
the illegal aliens aren't going to hurt you guys, but you might get sent to El Salvador, Kathy?
Yeah. It's a great point. And again, it's that let's use this one example and extrapolate out that this is just going to be a horrific thing for anyone. I love John Kennedy, from the senator from Louisiana. And as he said, what more due process do you want? This guy's been in front of 17 judges, some of them twice. We know he's here illegally. Okay. Oh, but we put him in this awful prison. All right. I'm sure there's a remedy for that. Whatever. They keep saying, bring him home. This is not his home. Maryland is not his home. He is a citizen of El Salvador. So he is home. Now, whether or not you want to keep him in that jail or move him to another part of the country or just outside of their borders, that's fine. But this is not his home, period.
Yeah, and El Salvador gets to decide that. Honestly, they do. Like, the El Salvador, we send him back. He's your citizen. You guys decide what you want to do with him. We're telling you, here's all the evidence he's an MS-13 member. But so you take that and you do what you will with it. It's not, not our jurisdiction.
Right. I think, listen, I'm a realist about this. I think that if Trump wanted to resolve this quickly, he could say, guess what? You know what? Just put him on a plane, send him to somewhere else, or to say, all right, come back, put him in front of an immigration judge. Let's get an emergency hearing for this guy and then send him wherever they're going to send him. Just, take that little tool away from the left of this due process stuff.
I don't think so, Michelle. I think let them keep going with this, because there is a very small segment of the population that actually gives a rip about this.
Yeah.
Now,
well, it's a good point. And a lot of Republicans want to say, you know what, keep flying down there. We'll pay for your flights. So I think you're right. There's something to be said for this, but the story just keeps getting dragged out. And unfortunately, there are a lot of gullible people out there who are going to go, yes, due process.
Michelle, they're going to vote for Democrats anyway. Like,
that's a good point.
That's my thing, is like, if they want to keep up with this and this is what they want to dominate the news cycle, let them do it. If I were in the Trump administration, I would say, like hell, we're going to lift a finger. We're going to facilitate it as much as the Supreme Court says we have to facilitate it, meaning we'll provide a plane if El Salvador wants to send him back and then we send him somewhere else. Cool. We'll do that. But we're going to let these Democrats continue to do it. Like, you never stop your enemy as they're making a fool
from digging their own hole.
All these people, they're not the people that are like, but it's a due process thing. They are never going to vote for Republicans. These people are too far gone. They still wear masks. They believe men should be in women's sports. And
they're protesting at Columbia you right now.
Yeah,
I'm not
they're
letting
not the
Jewish kids
people.
go
We
to
don't
class at
need
Yale.
them. Like
Yeah,
they were
no,
never going to be on our side.
it's a good point. It's a valid point. I agree with you. The numbers probably tell that story best. It's interesting to hear all these various legal minds on this. And, some of these people these lawyers, these attorneys, these judges are saying, just do what the Supreme Court asked you to do, get this over with, knock it off. But I do agree with you that the Democrats, the left, are really choosing some interesting hills on which to die.
You also can't give them an inch, because what'll happen if the Trump administration caves to this and brings this cat back or whatever, and hey, all right, here's another court thing. Then you've given them an inch, and then what they're going to do is they're going to say every single one that's been sent over, the murders, the rapists, you got to bring them back too. They get 20 days in court. You don't give them an inch. You say, this is what we're going to do. We're keeping these monsters out of our country, and if you don't like it, you can join them. And I think that's where you just draw the line in the sand with these people.
I love that concept. And my only concern is that if this administration gets painted as defying the Supreme Court, which is a conservative Supreme Court, that might not play so well in the midterms. And that's my only concern about that.
So. I don't think that the average person
I hope you're right.
The average person out there wants to deport all illegal aliens. I don't think that there's going to be somebody sitting there, the economy. The Democrats are so dumb right now. If they were smart, they would be talking about the economy, which I believe is going to correct itself. But if they were smart, they would be talking about the economy, because they might actually be able to get a foothold there. This is not where they're going to get a foothold. The Americans that don't have time to sit on X all day and cry tears with their Ukraine flag and the Palestinian flag and the mask and the syringe in their bio, they don't care about this. And they don't go to sleep at night like, gosh, due process for illegal aliens. What are we going to do about it? I just think they just don't. And I think they want all of them out. And I'm in that camp.
Well, you know what? I hope you're right. I really do. And I hope this doesn't backfire.
It's going to be over the economy. I promise you, that is the hill I will die on. If we lose the midterms, it is going to be because of the economy and tariffs. It is not going to be because Trump was too mean to the MS-13.
Well, listen, the woman running for Senate here in Minnesota is the lieutenant governor, and she's kind of a wacko. And I've been advised that she will be tough to beat. So Minnesota is sort of my framework for this. And unfortunately, I'm here for the time being. So kids graduate quick.
Not to be unfair to your state, but they also elected Tim Wolves.
I know.
So,
and part of that, Tommy, is you know what? So much of that has to do with our media here in Minnesota does not do its work. It didn't even flip a page of his bio. He looked like this nice old white guy. And he's a teacher. He was a teacher and a football coach. And so the national media did for the country what Minnesota's media wouldn't do for them. So, but we're stuck with Tim Walz. We're stuck with a lot of bad stuff here in Minnesota, I'm sad to say.
I will at least give Amy Klobuchar a little bit of credit, because she has been trying to talk about the economy. And it's funny because she's been, to my knowledge, she's been one of the only ones that's like, hey, maybe we talk about the economy instead of bringing back the illegal aliens. But listen, Minnesota, best of luck to you all. I do want to talk to you about something that I don't understand, and I really am curious your perspective on it. Okay. This NIL stuff for collegiate athletes is so bizarre to me. It's just, I think it's so out of hand. It's so wild to me, everything that's going on. I'm sure you know about Tennessee and the whole debacle there. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I'm not super read into all this because I don't really care that much about college football. But this NIL stuff and people making all this money, it's just, I think it's going to ruin collegiate sports. Yeah. But I want your take on it and if it can be reined in.
Well, so my husband was a Division I baseball player. My niece is a Division I basketball player. My son is a Division III baseball player. All I can tell you is that we've been really invested. My late father-in-law was a defensive coach at the University of Minnesota. We've been very invested in college sports, and I certainly covered it for much of my career. I agree with you. This is so bad for college sports. College sports was sort of that last bastion of there's cheating. Yeah, there's stuff. It's going to always be there. But competing for kids based on your coach, based on your program, based on his history, based on what positions you had available. one story that really bothers me, and I think it involves Alabama and Ohio State, maybe Iowa State. It doesn't matter. University A had this guy playing for him. He had a great first year. They said, we'll pay you to stay. And he goes, yeah, but this other school wants to pay me $100,000 to go there. So got in the transfer portal, went, collected his $100,000, and then went, you know what? I changed my mind. I want to go back to school A. Kept his $100,000 and went back. Never delivered a single down for the team that paid him. This thing is the wild, wild west right now. And I honestly don't know how they're going to correct it. It's ridiculous. And then it's bad enough you see rookies in the NFL and in the NBA. They get these massive contracts and they think they've got money forever. And then the next thing you know, they played 3 years and they're bankrupt. These kids are getting massive amounts of dollars and they've got agents and they're 18, 19, 20 years old. I just don't know how this is. You can say that these kids deserve some sort of compensation for bringing universities what they bring them. My husband, who is old school, would say that the compensation they're getting is an education, is a chance to, if they don't make it in a sport, to launch into another career and, room and board. That should be their compensation. And there's a lot to be said about that because I think it's less than 1% of college athletes go on to become pros. That's 99% of these kids are never going to have a career in pro sports. So it's a little crazy. It's a lot of money. Sometimes you may notice that a kid playing for Alabama or Texas has a barcode on his helmet. And you can walk up to your TV and scan that while you're watching the game and donate to his NIL, name, image, and likeness fund. It's kind of insane. And it's going to get to a point where college sports is going to go, we have so effed this up. What do we do now? I don't have the answer because I don't know every single fact of what they're looking at. I just know this is not the answer. This is a snowball running down a hill at a pace that it's going to eventually go.
Yeah, it's like prostituting young athletes. It's very weird to me.
Yeah.
What if, Michele, and I don't know how all this works, but what if you said, listen, we're going to let you make the money and whatever, but what's also going to happen is you have to have a 3.5 GPA. What do you think that would? I'm not talking about a 3.5 GPA and we're going to give you a class load that's like history of rock and roll, African American studies. We know what these athletes are enrolled in. And when they're in other classes, they simply take up space. Not all, but most. They're not there for school. Right. But, they're allowed to just skate by with these BS classes that are, it's supposed to be just like a little elective that's supposed to just have a little fun in your day. But it's like they put them in all these easy classes. Do you think that they could attain academic success and maybe earn some of the money that they're being handed?
That has been so out of vogue for so long that the university presidents would never stand for it because they wouldn't be able to recruit all the athletes they want to recruit because these kids, so many of them are incapable of maintaining a 3.5 in those kinds of classes. So unless they, if that were the case, if they made that a rule, they would manipulate the grades. They would absolutely manipulate the grades to keep these kids around because the toothpaste is out of the tube. And I think adding that layer, you've got these university chancellors and presidents who see how much money they bring in through college football and college basketball. And men's and women's. And they're seeing this and they're going, oh, this is great. Because now we can build this other building and we can pay these, we got this gorgeous landscaping. So this is a follow the money. If that deters a program and a university from getting the money, it's not going to be implemented.
Maybe we just stop pretending that they're going to school.
Just have them there as sort of, here's our athletic department. Yeah. None of these kids are in classes. They just come here to train. Yeah, I mean, that's basically what is happening with some exceptions. They take up space. And they take up the environment for those that are actually trying to learn. And I know this. I went when I was at UNLV, which is a D1 school, but I wouldn't say like an outstanding athletic school. They've done good and bad and whatever. It's a mixed bag. But I remember being in class, at UNLV, and this was before NIL and all that stuff. And, the athletes were just taking up space anyway.
And,
Yeah.
it was rather distracting for kids that actually were paying to go there and, get an education. It was rather distracting to have the athletes there that didn't give one crap about
Right.
any of the academics going on. Now, that's not all. There are some
Correct.
that pay attention and care and get a
Yeah.
worthwhile degree, but most, no.
They really need to redirect so many of these students. Again, with that stat I just laid out, that such a small percentage of these athletes are going to go make it in the pros. Such a tiny percentage. They've all convinced themselves, and they've all been convinced since they were the phenom little leaguer, since they were the phenom peewee football player. They've all convinced themselves they're going to be the one that lives the dream. And some of those dreams have happened. Don't get me wrong. Some of those dreams have happened. We've had undrafted players who went to Mankato State, end up being, an all-pro wide receiver. You have it happen. Those exceptions, the exceptions that Sonny Hostin likes to talk about, those exceptions are not the rule. What they need to convince these students of is that they've got to take advantage of the education that's being presented to them. So I think D1 is going to turn into kind of this professional level sports, and Division II and Division III, that's where you're going to see the real academics who are playing for the love of the game.
Also, and this is the last thing I'll say about this, but I have a literal expert in front of me, so I have to ask you about this. So what do you think this is going to do to pro sports, though? Because I can tell you already, I'm closely linked to the baseball world.
Yeah.
And a lot of I call them kids that are coming up through, A-ball and AAA and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They've barely been in on the NIL stuff when they were in college, but they were a part of it. And what I think it's doing is, back in the old guard of sports, which wasn't that long ago, maybe 10 years ago, you have kids coming up that were drafted, out of college, or, most of them drafted out of college. And, they were tenacious, and they had a hunger, and they were not entitled, and they knew they were rookies, and they wanted to work hard, and they wanted to fight for every opportunity. But I think that that's going to change now that these brats are coming out of college making this money. I think they're going to go into the pro sports world being entitled brats. And I'm wondering if you think that that's going to be just across sports. I think that that's going to be a trend.
I think it's certainly going to be a trend in football and basketball. I do, because I heard someone talk about interviewing Shedeur Sanders, Deion Sanders' son, who, by the way, is getting his jersey retired already which after 2 years of Colorado or whatever, which is kind of unheard of, saying that Shedeur was a very entitled person in his interview. And of course, when you've raised these, you sort of created this mindset that, yeah, I am entitled to this, I am entitled to that. And I've heard guys coming out of college, entering the draft and saying, I'm not going to go to a team unless they write me into the ownership group. What? I mean, really? No, go earn it. Go earn it. I think we've got this whole group who entitled is the best word for it. They believe they are better than they are. And I think what may happen, and I hope that all of the veterans and the coaches and the general managers have a really solid spine. Yeah, you want good players. You want the best, but you want the best characters. And that's always who make up champions, are the best characters. So if you have a guy like this come into your organization, you better set him straight quick. I mean, look, they're going to make enormous amounts of money. You're not obligated to write them into the ownership group. Now, if a player commands that kind of control over an owner, God bless that owner. It's going to be tough sledding.
No kidding. Well, I'd also say, and this is even before NIL, but a cautionary tale would be Johnny Manziel.
Yes,
so
indeed.
Lots of hope. And then guess what? He got caught up hanging with the celebrities, and he really loved being famous. And then we saw how his career turned out. So a word of warning to all the brats out there. Just maybe, I think that there are two groups of people in this world, Michele, those who are humble and those who are about to be. And, best of luck to them. Thank you so much, though, for taking all this time with me. I really appreciate your knowledge on this. You are a beacon of knowledge in this space. So thank you so much. And best of luck to you in Minnesota. May God transfer you to greener pastures, as in a red state.
It's coming. Okay. It's coming.
Good.
It'll be there.
Tennessee is great. I'll just say that. Thanks so much, Michele. All right. if you take out a loan, you got to pay back that loan. And if that seems unfair to you and you want to cry about it, well, go for it, but it's not our problem. Buck up, buttercups. It's called life, and it's time for final thoughts. So if you take out a loan and you don't pay back that loan when you're supposed to, you will be in default and subject to the consequences that come along with it. Welcome to the school of hard knocks, brats. The Trump administration isn't playing around and will begin collection on those default student loan payments starting next month. You've been given a 5-year pass, and that honeymoon period is over. If you don't make payments on your student loans, you will face garnished wages and other consequences of ding, 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 your own actions, or inactions in this case. The crybabies on social media, well, they are hysterical over it. They just can't fathom the idea that they are indeed responsible for the money they voluntarily borrowed because Joe Biden told them someone else would pay for it. Well, Joe lied to you, and now it's time to pay the piper. This is a life lesson for you brats that have prioritized eating out, self-care, vacations, concert tickets, and me time over repaying your debt. And I don't feel sorry for you, not one little itty-bitty bit, because I'd venture to guess the ones most upset about this are the ones wearing those ugly yet expensive Golden Goose shoes or toting around the latest iPhones or Apple Watches or whatever else y'all blow your money on these days. But let me let you in on a little life hack. No one cares if you didn't budget for paying back the loans you took out. If you finance a vehicle and you don't make your payments, they repo it. If you have a mortgage and you don't make your payments, the bank is going to take your house. So this process is not to pick on you. It's a reality of life, and you better get used to it now. All that money, by the way, that could have maybe gone to your debt forgiveness has been used up by Zelensky, illegal immigrants, and science projects to trans mice. Bummer. Those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in tomorrow live at 1 p.m. Eastern. Also catch full episodes of the show, Outkick.com, Fox Nation, whenever you want. Please do like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.